This is where our author's story begins. Her train to London had been delayed, and while she waited, ideas came to her about a boy in wizarding school.
Absolutely true, yeah. I was on the train from Manchester to London, and it came, just came.
Had something like that ever happened to you before?
Yes, truthfully. I mean, other ideas had just come to me, because I think if you're a writer and that's what you spend a huge amount of time doing, ideas do come to you. But nothing had ever come so with such a, I had this, I thought, God, I'd love to write that. And when I got off the train, I went straight home and I started writing.
J.K. Rowling looked to her own past to get inspiration for her story. Let's go back to 1965, where Jo grew up just outside of Bristol. She was born on the 31st of July, the same birthday as Harry Potter. Jo lived on a suburban British street, and in the house they even had a cupboard underneath the staircase. When Jo was little, she threw a battery at her little sister, thinking she would duck out of the way. Well, she didn't, and it left a huge scar on her forehead. This is where Jo got the idea to have a lightning bolt scar for Harry Potter.
Mine was always crooked, always.
Did you wear similar clothes?
Oh God, yes.
Different colours.
Yeah, you always had pink, and I always had blue.
Because you were the boy, Jo?
Yeah.
Because you were the eldest?
Yeah, and I was supposed to be a boy, so...
Simon John.
I was supposed to be Simon John. I even know who I was supposed to be.
Oh, they told you?
Oh, yeah.
She was a massive disappointment.
Yeah. And so then I said quite hopefully, and when Di came along, were you disappointed too? No. I said, was that because you found out it was quite nice to have a girl? No. So then I just went upstairs and wept.
I wrote this little book about a rabbit called Rabbit and his adventures, and I illustrated it myself too, and showed it to my mother, who, as mothers do, would rhapsodise and said how wonderful it was. And what's interesting to me is I was 6 years old, and I thought, well, are we going to get it published? I knew exactly what I wanted to do.
When J.K. Rowling was 9 years old, she moved with her family to a new house in Chepstow. Her favorite part about the house was the forest in the backyard. Jo was intrigued by nature, and she dreamt up imaginary creatures and eventually the forbidden forest itself. Although Jo had a happy life growing up, she can remember how it felt being a child. She used these themes throughout all 7 of her books.
I have no nostalgia whatsoever for childhood. I mean, I wouldn't go back if you paid me. Adults surprise me by appearing to forget how powerless you feel as a child, how despairing and just enormous pressures on you as a child, even a happy child.
And how cruel the other kids can be.
They can be vicious, and I was bullied, and I hated it. I had great friends, which got me through that, no problem. But I can remember, going home in tears.
Since J.K. Rowling had issues at home with her father, she would later lose contact with him. Similar is true with the main character Harry, who looks up to other male characters in the book instead of his family.
I was very frightened of my father for a very long time, but also tried, well, it's a common combination, isn't it? I also tried desperately to get his approval and make him happy, I suppose.
The biggest impact on Jo's life occurred 6 months after she began to write her books. Her mother passed away from multiple sclerosis.
How did her departure, her death, affect this book?
Definitely Mum dying had a profound influence on the books, because in the first draft his parents were disposed of really in quite a almost cavalier fashion. I didn't really dwell on it. 6 months in, my mother dies, and I simply can't kill a fictional mother that callously. I'm not saying it wasn't callous, but it wasn't what it became. And I really think from that moment on, death became a central, if not the central theme of the 7 books.
Distraught that her mother was gone, Jo moved to Portugal and got a job teaching English as a second language. While here, she got married and had her first child, Jessica. The marriage, however, only lasted 2 years, and after the divorce, she moved back to England. While Jo was faced with depression, she still continued to write. She would sit in a cafe for hours with baby Jessica by her side and fabricate her story.
So you used to come here
Yeah.
to this cafe and write.
Yes.
Now, why would you come here? What was the point?
Why here particularly was because I quickly worked out which cafes in Edinburgh would allow me to sit in the corner of a cafe and write for hours on end and order maybe 2 coffees.
You got only 2 cups of coffee because you really couldn't afford.
I was a
much
bit broke
more.
at the time.
You were on welfare.
I was, yeah.
Joe Rowling was sitting in your cafe over there in the corner, writing away. What were you thinking?
Not a lot at the time. Again, as all the hullabaloo's come along afterwards. For us, it was just someone else, another customer eating, drinking.
But coming in with the little baby in the baby carriage, sitting in the corner writing, did you think a little daft or?
Well, no. I mean, she was writing. I mean, she was doing what she wanted to do. I mean, she had I suppose, a dream, an idea of what she wanted to do and where she wanted to take it.
Jo's luck started turning around when she received a grant from the Scottish Arts Council. This allowed her to finish her first book.
I was determined to try. I was determined to try because frankly my life was such a mess at this point. What was the worst that could happen? Everyone turned me down, big deal.
This is really the room where I finished with this stone here. This is really where I turned my life around. Completely. I mean, my life changed so much in this flat. I feel I really became myself here.
And after many rejections from publishers, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was bought by Bloomsbury in the UK for $4,000. But since $4,000 wasn't enough to live on, she began working as a French teacher. After several months, Scholastic bought the American rights to Harry Potter for $105,000. They changed the name to the Sorcerer's Stone and began printing in 1998. Quickly after, she wrote the next 3 books in the series.